Welcome to TradingABI.com. This is John. This report is for the 20th of January. Well, the week should be interesting, and then we're going to start the impeachment. That may have some market gyrations develop into it. We're also at frothy levels, but this beautiful reset of the shakeout was very nice. We now see some short-term buyer weakness as we get towards the end of the month. A little bit of short rising, still cyan below the red, meaning that bulls still have control over this. You just may see some softness simply because there aren't enough short-term, mid-term buyers jumping back or continuing to pop in, unless we see maybe a little bit more of a dip towards that EBM. Let's get that value up there, 3301 range, which is not surprising because from our intraday standpoint, we had that range as a positive extreme. So likewise, NASDAQ, just a little bit cleaner, just shows it clearer. Same situation though, and you had a positive extreme from Friday's action, so the low of that getting retested would not be unreasonable. Euro, still right back at the baseline of that original breakout with the positive extreme. So that's still in line with expectations. Obviously, DOC spread within there, but full reset with the short-term buyers. So the potential bounce is possible, but it's still within the weak configuration. Oil, having based really come back completely from that breakout move because of supply. So no real pressure growing for inflation. That's going to put some pressure on gold. The only thing that will keep it elevated will be continued uncertainty of political situations, particularly in Mideast. Now, from an intraday standpoint, well, just we continued from Friday's action. We did get a couple little short signals. They produced okay results. We still ended up with the buys coming very clean every time we dip below cyan. And what I did mention, I was going to talk about our pivots that you see, the pivot choose the P2s, P3s. What they're referencing is when we have a dip of the red DOC where it comes down and then we make a secondary move back up that pivots and it exceeds the high of that previous one, usually we'll get an indication, particularly if it's within a buy signal. And you'll get these P markers along with the X's. The X2 is a different version of the same thing, representing just a strong potential buy situation from that. And those usually tend to have a little bit more strength than your initial dip down, particularly when it's below the negative 13.5, like even we're seeing currently on the 5K here. When that first dip comes down, you can get a bounce of it. It's not that often that those bounces continue to run. It's usually that second improvement, or if the red DOC can make it back above the negative 13.5 on that initial run. What we often see when that's going to happen is the green will pass the cyan, and we know anyway. So at that particular point, it becomes moot. But it gives us a little bit of an edge from a power standpoint, just to know. If I scroll back to some of these other ones, you can see when they take place right back there, and we've exceeded it. And the different numbers represent the different zones that they're in. So you'll have the zone that's obviously between 13 and negative 7.5, and then going up to 0, and that's where it counts from, going up there. So just let you know that you're in a higher zone, relatively speaking. And that doesn't negate any of the other earlier signals. So even before we had this one, this is one of those where it's like, wow, okay, I'm up here. Am I looking to exit? Not when I see that P2, I'm looking like the potential for it to improve even greater is there. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. That led to a nice move going through there. And they can happen at the highs. I'm usually a little less excited about them when they're at peak modes, unless I've got really strong shakeout reading going on from here. In this particular case, when this P3 came in, we had higher shakeout convergence. It wasn't until the second run-up that you start to say, okay, am I getting any divergences? But in this case, you ended up with the magenta over the 15, and you know that's pretty healthy going through. So I thought I'd add that information in there because it's definitely worth noting, particularly if you're looking for solid opportunities for trades that go through. And particularly what we're expecting when we see those P2 pivots in that is that you're going to have a breakout that's going to continue to the upside. And that's where I'm always watching because sometimes you'll end up with like a DOC spread situation that comes after a pivot. And if you haven't seen a significant move, then likely you've captured a point where buyers just were overwhelmed with shorting, and usually you get a little decent sized dip from that. What we're looking at currently here at the beginning of the open is we've just pretty much filled back in this large group area. With the dip below the red line, I think we're probably going to see some more softness going through before the end of this time period. So we'll probably have to see if we get a little more action. This could be the beginnings of this concern for the impeachment stuff. We'll see. I think in general the market's got to fill back a little bit, or at least pause here before it can do anything else. And this would be consistent with what I was talking about from a couple of years ago, this market looking more like the 90s, where we just ended up with this little soft increases and then fades. We're just going to be looking for news-driven kind of fear aspects, because as long as the Fed continues to provide the kind of liquidity that it is, there's nowhere else for money to go. It's just, this is what happens when central markets get involved. It's so much money. And they're lending directly to hedge funds and that to create these high volume trades. So they're just exacerbating the situation of continued market rise. As always, though, I will update things, and if there's anything new, I will put it up on the charts. Trade well. Talk again later.